My name's Adrian Cook. I'm a photographer based in Sydney, and I specialise in a really old process called the wet plate collodion process, which dates back to 1851. It was invented by a guy called Frederick Scott Archer. Very big at the time in America and in Europe. Wasn't particularly big in Australia, but yeah, over the past 10 years there's been a big resurgence in people using it, and I started, say, about 5 years ago. I shoot on glass, black glass, clear glass, or colour glass, and also on aluminium. All the lenses I use, or most of them, date back to around 1875. Early 1900s. The formats I use can vary from 35mm to 10x8. I use a whole variety of cameras for that as well. As a photographer, I've known about old processes for years. I used to be a printer prior to an assistant. So with digital photography, it kind of bored me to tears. It was just a way of finding a new way to work. That kind of got me back to, back in the darkroom, back to make it more of a craft. Sort of getting my hands dirty again, which I find with digital photography, just, there's no surprises there. So yeah, wet plate photography, it's just a beautiful process and very hard to do, but beautiful results. Normally I just shoot portraits of the process, and I tend to shoot them either in my studio or I converted an old 50s caravan into a mobile darkroom, so I can go on location and do portraits that way as well. So yeah, doing landscapes and still life is not new to me, but it's quite a difference. It's quite a different to what I normally do. The latest series of pictures I've been working on are called imaginary landscapes, and they've kind of come about because of the COVID-19 pandemic. Like, I'd hoped to be now somewhere, middle Australia, driving around in one of the caravan, taking portraits and doing landscapes. But as I'm unable to do that, I've been making my little imaginary landscapes in my studio using the wet plate process. I've got loads of time, I've got loads of chemicals, and yeah, it's been quite enjoyable. Just making things out of nothing really to make a landscape. I'm using just things I pick up. I'm using stones, shells, leaves, rocks, all sorts of things. I also picked up a lot of them during the fires. Like, a lot of the leaves I've been using are leaves I picked off the beach on the south coast, which had burnt in the fires and then landed in the ocean and then washed up on the beach. Initially, my landscapes were quite flat, quite two-dimensional, but as time's gone on, as I've had more time to work at it, they're getting more and more detailed and more sort of three-dimensional. Yeah, so at the moment, with COVID-19, I've got loads of free time, so as a process itself takes a lot of time. It's perfect really, so to make a plate, I basically have to expose it and develop it, all while the plate is wet. So what I do is I go into a dark room, I prepare a plate, that then goes into the silver nitrate. I then run out, take the portrait, run back in the dark room, develop it and process it. And it's all got to be done while the plate is still wet. That's why it's called the wet plate process. And of course along the way there's all sorts of things can go wrong with the chemicals, with the exposure. I think the nicest thing about doing what I'm doing using the wet plate process is that they'll last for like 200 years. So it's kind of nice knowing that, you know, in 3 or 4 generations time, people will be finding these artifacts, picking them up and looking at them and wondering what they were from and who did them and what was COVID-19. So yeah, that's what I like about it. The current thing I'm working on, it's called, what's it called? Fuck.